right, guys. So it's Friday. It's the end of the unit, the end of the week. You have your assignment for today. Do you have any questions about the assignment?
Yes. Can
Go ahead.
you explain again the assignment, please?
All right. Let me just open that for you guys. 02, the assignment. Because I got some views, some messages from some of you. Like you're a little bit confused about the assignment, so it's time to clarify any of those confusions. So screen sharing. Where is the guideline? Here. All right, so all the information you need is in your assignment, I mean, in your documents. And if you need more help, then you have the books that I told you about. You know, they can help you with this. Now it says, explain which theories of language and language learning are reflected in the material textbooks you use in your English class. Like I said, if you want to take the passages and analyze that, that's fine. It's no problem. If you feel more comfortable with another textbook, use another textbook. It's fine. Just let me know what textbook it is and, you know, all the information about that. So it's explain which theories of language and language learning are reflected in the materials. Which are there? We said behavioristic, cognitivist, constructivist, and all those. Okay. So how are you going to be able to know? Well, you could read the intro. Maybe sometimes they explain that this book is aimed at developing blah, 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 blah. But like I said, that's all talk. When you look at the materials, when you look at the activities inside the units of the book, that's when you know what exactly do they want to achieve. Okay, so look at it, and if you feel that there is a lot of grammar, then you may say, well, this is more structural, and you explain the instructions have explicit grammar. There is a lot of individual work. It doesn't really allow or call for group works, projects, tasks that they have to complete together, problems they have to solve. Okay. On the other hand, if you see a lot of the tasks, a lot of the activities are actually tasks like get together with your friends and organize a party. You have to assign roles and you have to convince people to come to the party or to, I don't know, cooperate with someone. Okay, so it is more task oriented. So it is more collaborative. Okay, maybe constructivist. Depends on how they use it. Okay, so that's why I want you to analyze that textbook and say, the theory of language here is more social. It's about communication. The theory of language here is more functional because it's teaching you how to do different things, but without reaching that level of you on your own and try to come up with your own ways, your own answers. That's more communicative. Functional is just, like I said, the functions. Like just repeat this conversation here, this dialogue, in which you are the waiter and you're the customer, and you're going to order food in a restaurant, ask for the check, and maybe return a dish if you don't like it, right? Those are just functions. Okay. But if you say, yes?
Does it necessarily have to be based on a book? Because I'm doing it using my experience as a teacher, that I have to follow like certain structure that they give us, and they pointed out the activities and all the things that we have to do. So I decided to do it like that, and
Oh,
but using the theory.
okay.
It's not
So analyze that. If it's more structural, then you say that, it is more
yeah,
structural. The instructions are more grammar. it relies heavy on memorization and repetition. Uh,
So
the
if I do it
interactive,
like that,
yeah, it's okay. Don't worry. It's perfectly okay.
thank you.
The idea is to, to develop your muscles of how do I explain this? Like I need to analyze this, and we're going to go over it and say, well, this activity is highly grammatical, but this other activity calls more for collaboration. This other activity, so, like what activities win? Do you have more grammar than interaction? Do you have more individual work than group work or pair work? Do you have more, because textbooks they're going to try to make it, attractive. So they're going to include lots of activities, varied activities. But again, if you just do a count and you say, wow, out of, I don't know, 20 activities in the unit, 12 are grammatical, and there is one reading, there is only 2 listenings, and the listenings have to do with grammar, or do they have to do more with vocabulary? Or are the listenings aimed at providing a model for students to carry out conversations or dialogues? Okay, so that can give you an idea of what is the theory of language and the theory of language learning that these people have. What kind of objective do they want to achieve? Okay, the design that we're saying about the method. Um, how is this structure? How is this organized? I don't want to say structure for grammar, but organization. What do they present first? What do they present second? What do they present next? Um, do the activities rely heavily on the teacher explaining, or is more about the student understanding on their own? Can you give the same class without the materials, or do you definitely need the materials? Okay, because if you look at the textbook, well, you need the material. But you know, uh, but is it all about the materials, or is more about the students interacting with the teacher or with themselves, or is more about the students interacting with the material? Like I said, if there is a lot of individual activities that they have to do material, then the material plays a big role in that class. If the material just gives you some headlines, headlines or guidelines, and say, go ahead and talk to a group and do whatever you can. Okay, so it's not so much about the material. Okay, so that's what you're going to do. And the second part, well, I guess it's easier. Is explain the importance of the component design and give at least 3 examples of how design translates into procedure in the classroom. So again, you have to put the elements of design, objectives, syllabus, teaching the learning activities, roles of teachers, learners, and materials, and you're going to explain that. How do they connect one another? And again, how does that translate into the procedure? Well, we said the procedure is presentation. Hello?
Practice.
Okay, practice.
Feedback.
And feedback, right? So how does that translate into the moment-to-moment dynamic of the class, right? First, you got the objectives, okay? Those objectives, like we said, they have to be divided into the units that you're going to present. It's not like for unit 1, you reach the final objective, right? That's not how it works, right? It has long-term objectives. What is it? I don't know. Depends on the textbook, or it depends on the course, okay? Like when you're working with children, most of the time, the long-term objective is for students to develop a varied knowledge of vocabulary, right? Or to become more familiar and more comfortable with English, right? That's the objective. The objective is not for students to be bilingual at the end of kindergarten. The objective is for students to develop a great range of vocabulary. Why? Because the parents think, well, eventually they're going to go to another school and they're going to keep studying. I've never seen a class program for kindergarten that says the students are going to be fluent in the grammar of anything, or they're going to be able to, carry out functions. It's more about learning vocabulary and maybe some functions here and there, but nothing more than that. As they progress, they go to Centro Idiomas or any other language school, then things get more serious, so to speak, right? And we work heavily on the grammar. Okay. But then again, some schools, they don't teach grammar, barely. It's Harmon Hall. It's more about communication. It's more about talking. It's more about responding. So those groups, they say the objective is for students to be able to carry out functions, or the objective is for students to be able to have a improvise conversation with somebody about familiar topics, or I don't know. Okay. So if those are the goals, how do you put that into the units? How do you organize that in the syllabus? Because the syllabus is going to tell me what teaching or learning activities am I going to present first and what am I going to present second, right? How is the teacher going to present? How are the students going to react? What is the role of the material? Is it very important? Is it not so much important? Okay, so like I said, these are the elements, we divide them, but they're all put together because, they, once you explain the activities, teaching, learning activities, within that explanation, it is the role of the teacher, the role of the student, and the role of the material. Okay, so how does that translate into the class, right? So class 1, unit 1, first day. I know what I'm going to present. I know what activities I'm going to do. I know in which way I'm going to present them. And that takes me to how do I present the content? Okay, again, the way I present the content is going to reflect what I think my role as a teacher is and what the role of the student is. Okay, maybe I'm going to present the content from a very traditional point of view where the teacher explains everything, content, rules, examples, okay, like explicitly. We're going to work with present continuous. This is the form, the formula, subject plus auxiliary plus very ing, whatever. We use it to talk about this, and that. Everything coming from the teacher, very traditional. The student is more passively just receiving that, trying to memorize, trying to remember all these things. And then when the teacher feels satisfied that the explanation has been understood, then they move on to practice. Right now you're going to practice. But again, if we go with the traditional way of practicing, probably a grammar sheet, like take these verbs and just change it to the ing, and then take the ing form and put it in the correct in the sentence, or remember to use the correct form of the auxiliary. So a lot of repetition. Some exercises used to be like that, like 10 sentences, and all you had to do is just write the correct form of the verb be. He going, she, we, and so you just have to change that little part. She is going, I am going, we are going, they are going, just for them to drill and memorize. Then you have to use the auxiliary, and then you go back to the ing form and the rules. And yes.
I have a question. Are we going to analyze a unit or the whole book?
I would suggest the whole book. Work on one unit, and just from one unit, you say, in this unit, there are 20 activities, and those activities are divided like this. So that leads me to believe that this is a more traditional way of teaching with behavioristic and passive students and blah, blah, and relies heavily on the material. Blah, blah. Just take a look at the rest to see if the rest of the units are, let's say, not coherent, consistent with that, because maybe you just got a bad unit, like that unit is all about grammar, but the other unit is all about talking, the other unit. So, okay. When you analyze textbooks, I always suggest something that I read somewhere, that you start analyzing from the last unit to the first unit. Don't start from the first unit to the last unit. Because designers, people that make those books, they usually bring the big guns to the first units, you know, because those are the ones that most people look at. So the best activities and the most impressive things are going to be in the first units. But then pretty much halfway through that, like they run out of ideas y ya nomás le completan ahí con cuero y con grasita, y, you know. And you say, dame un kilo de carne. Al principio te dan un kilo, te falta como 100 gramos, échale grasita y llega a 100 gramos total, ya. Okay, so that could be a, you know, it's a way for editorial houses to cheat students and schools, right? So my suggestion is, if you have to make a decision about choosing a book for your school, for your classes, whatever, check the whole thing, but start from the back to the front, because usually the last units are very boring, very stupid. They have nothing to do with the rest because ya no más quieren acabar. You know, it's like, oh, let's just finish this. But just to check that it's consistent. But the Yanni, Blanca, Paola, Ricardo, and I, the ones that I'm watching here, is only one unit. You're going to analyze only one unit. So that unit should give you enough information about the theory of language and the theory of language learning. But again, if you just want to make sure, glance over, look over the other units, and you know, just to check if they're consistent. Most textbooks are very consistent, but not to say repetitive, okay? So the way the first unit is divided is pretty much the same way the rest of the units are going to be divided. Well, who knows? Maybe somebody got more creative, okay? But again, let me clarify. Your analysis is going to be based on one unit, only one unit. I will appreciate if you make that analysis like there are this many activities and try to divide them, you know, like this many grammatical activities, this many reading activities, this many vocabulary activities, this many writing activities, this many speaking activities, this many listening activities, because that pretty much can give you an idea of, you know, is this more structural? Is this more functional? Is this more social communicative? And then within those activities, you know, what are they asking the students to do? Okay. So again, the theory of language learning, do they see learning as an individual activity? Do they see learning as working together? Okay. Are they learning just the skills, or are they learning how to use the skills in a function? How to, you know, so all that, take all that into account when you are describing and you are explaining, reflecting the material. And again, the elements of design. It said, according to this unit, the very first activity, right? That's the presentation of the content. Talking about the procedure, every unit presents the content in the same way. Okay, what way is that? Do they open with grammar? Do they open with a conversation? Do they open with a task? You know, how do they present the content? That can give you an idea of, you know, is this syllabus structuralist? Is this a lexical syllabus? Is this a communicative? Oh, come on. Hey, not some. Did you guys cut me off? You hackers? Oh, there you are. Sorry, I don't know what happened. All right, so now we're back. Everybody? Yes. Okay, any other questions?
Yes, I have another question.
Go ahead, please.
The second step is related to the textbooks, to the analyzation, or is going to be I don't know, different.
More abstract, right? More in general. I mean, if you want to make it about the textbook you analyze is fine, but you can just talk in general how the design can be translated into the procedure, right? Like I said, the procedure talks about what we do in class. What we do in class, most of the time comes from the textbook, although as you get more experience, you realize that the textbook is just another tool. It's not the Bible. It's not the only map. You know, you can go from point A to point B without the material, but it's a lot easier when you have that because you have a kind of a map, a guide that you can follow. Otherwise, you're always having to come up with stuff, and it gets tiring after a while. But again, you can take a break from the textbook and still carry out the objectives and functions and whatever of the textbook without looking at it. I mean, you do another activity, you do a task, you do a role play, I don't know, something. Uh, but it is a guide. So again, how can you give me an example of how we can relate, connect the elements of design to the presentation, practice, and feedback? Because you're gonna have to do that in the assignment, so might as well we talk about it right now. So go on, give me your ideas, and it can be anybody, don't worry. Okay, Yvette Gagiola, are you okay? She froze. Oh,
Yes.
oh, there you are. So do you have any idea of how we can make that connection?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, the connection between the design and the procedure, the objectives, the syllabus, the teaching learning activities. How do we connect that with the moment to moment of the class?
With theories,
Sorry?
the method, I don't know.
I think the
With theories or a method?
yeah, I mean that's always going to be there in the back, right? So that's in the background. You don't tell the students you're going to learn with this theory, you're going to learn with this method. Well, the method maybe, but they don't know and they really don't care, right? I mean, when you are in the class, you're going to do what we just said. You're going to present the content. You're going to practice it. Well, students are going to practice it. You're going to, check that they're practicing it. And you're going to make sure they know if they're doing it right or wrong, which is the feedback. Okay? That's what you do in class. That's it. But again, the design, including the objectives and the syllabus and the teaching activity, right? That's going to be in the back. That's behind the curtain. I don't know how to explain it. Okay. Your activities have to reflect that design. Okay. So if the objective of the course is for students to speak English and do activities in English, then that's what you're going to do. Okay. But again, that's in the design. Again, you don't bring the design to the classroom. The design is somewhere in the coordination over there. Your coordinator has explained that to you. They tell you, hey, we want to achieve this. And when you go to Harmon Hall, they tell you that students need to speak. Students need to be able to talk, have conversations, right? So that's on you. In the grammar? No. You have to be able to, help them with the grammar without being explicit about grammar. Okay. Yes. So you're not going to give them grammar homework. If you give them any kind of homework, it's going to be aim at communication, aim at conversation, aim at, okay. That's good to know, right? But that's outside the class, not inside the class. If inside the class you happen to get a student that is begging for grammar, then you have to find a way to satisfy that without betraying the objectives, because you might get fired or something, because the school is has its reputation. For example, Berlitz was very adamant, was very reluctant to address grammar in the classroom. Okay, it's like if they ask you about grammar, don't give them grammar. Just give them more practice for them to figure out grammar. Because the selling point of Berlitz and Harmon Hall is communication, not grammar. Okay. A lot of people complain about Centro Idiomas because they teach a lot of grammar, and yes, we do. But we teach it openly. I mean, you have to learn the structure of the language. That's a given. You have to. But you don't necessarily have to know, by name, object pronoun, transitive verbs, and you just use them, and you're home free. So when you bring the activities to the class, again, right, how do you present your material? How do you present the content? Not the material, but the content. Like I said, you can present very explicitly with grammar and say, this is the grammar that we're going to learn. Or you can do it more covertly and say, listen to the conversation. Watch this video. What is happening? What are they talking about? What are they doing? Okay. I mean, just by making those decisions, again, implied what is the role of the teacher, what is the role of the student, what is the role of the material, right? If you're using the material just to present situations, then you're saying that the students are going to figure out things on their own. So you see the student as an active participant of the class and the teacher as a guide, not as the never-ending source of knowledge, okay? But if you present your content more explicitly, saying, this is the structure, this is the formula, this is how we're going to do it, blah, 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 okay? Implicitly, you're saying the teacher is the center of the class and the student is a passive individual, is there to be filled with the knowledge of the teacher. And always bring your grammar sheets and always bring your vocabulary lists or, your verb list. So you're putting a lot of emphasis on the material, okay? Like I said, your actions inside the class are going to reflect the theory of language learning and the theory of language that the school or the teacher has, and the design. What are the objectives? What is the syllabus? What are the teaching and learning activities? And the role of the elements of the class. And like, you don't have to go and say you are an individual and you're going to be passive. You're an individual and you're going to be active. Just by the way you treat them, by the way that you ask them what to do, that's that is going to make evident what is the role of the teacher, what's the role of the learner. How do we see learning? Okay. No, estos burros nomás aprenden repitiendo. Okay, so you see it like that. That's your belief system. So you're more behavioristic. Oh, es que los muchachos aprenden más cuando interactúan y tratan de construir su propio conocimiento y crean sus propias definiciones. Okay, so you're more constructive, more cognitivist, right? You rely on students' brain. Okay, so that's why I say when you bring the material, the example of the video, the conversation, and then you tell them to reflect. What's happening? What are they doing? They're ordering in a restaurant. Okay, excellent. And what did they do? She said, excuse me, I'm ready to order. Okay, what do you think she said that? Because she's hungry and she wants to talk to the waiter to do something. Okay, it's very nice. So they're doing the work and you're guiding them. Okay, very different from when you go to a restaurant, this is what you say first. And I am ready to order. Now, look, it's present tense, I am ready, then an infinitive of purpose, I'm ready to order. Okay, that's more traditional, that's more behavioristic, that's more grammatical, more structural. Okay, so it is just by looking at those activities. Now, the practice. How are you going to do the practice? Are you going to ask them to just fill in the blanks, repeat, 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 memorize? Are you going to ask them to make their own sentences, make their own dialogues, carry out their own conversations, their own situations, their own dialogues, role plays? Okay. So you're saying the student is more active. Okay. Your feedback, how are you going to give feedback? How are you going to let them know that they're doing a good job or a bad job? Are you just going to go and say, no, así no, burro? That's more behavioristic. Okay, again, you don't see the student as an active agent. You see them as an animal, and they need to be corrected because we do not allow mistakes here on the street in competition. No, Cobra Kai, sorry. Okay, so no, I mean, maybe you give feedback by saying, oh, okay, well, think about that. You know, what if you change this? Or can anybody help us here? You know, like, let's work together and see what was so good about this and what do you need to work on, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So those three elements, I mean, those three moments in your class, the procedure, presenting, practicing, and giving feedback, okay, they're going to be consistent with the design, which puts the method into work, which is aim or fuel founded, encouraged, boosted by the belief, by the approach. Okay. Ahora, si yo te dijera, oiga, el COVID, no le das caso, ponte detente ahí, vente con agua bendita, da 2, 3 pares nuestros, ¿lo harías? No, no, porque no crees en eso. Si creyeras en eso, lo harías y no dudarías ni un minuto. Oye, ¿por qué te estás bañando con agua bendita? No, es que sí, no me da COVID. ¿Ok? Entonces, ¿por qué lo estás poniendo los plays a repetir y repetir y repetir? Es que la única manera de aprender, porque eso yo estoy convencido de eso. Entonces, yo llego a la clase, presento explícitamente, les doy prácticas ya así dirigidas de que nada más tienen que cambiar el verbo para que no se equivoquen, no agarren por la costerita ni nada. Luego reviso que le hicieran bien, los regaño cuando lo hacen mal, hasta que lo hacen bien. Cuando lo hacen bien, a lo mejor les doy una felicitación, un dulce, no sé, ustedes sabrán. ¿Ok? Porque esa es la única manera que estos plebes van a aprender. Okay, that's your belief system, that's your approach, and your objectives is like that. Okay? Entonces, si ves el sílabus de esa persona, es un sílabus estructurado, de estructura, de gramática, es un sílabus conductista, donde él cree o ellos creen en reforzamiento de hábitos, eliminación de errores. El alumno no entiende, pero va a ser capaz de hacerlo, así igual que los animalitos en el circo, ¿no? Que no te subes a la pelotita, mira, 2, 3 chicotazos, a veces no te subes a la pelotita, hasta que se sube la pelotita le dejas de pegar, entonces ya el pobre animal pues sabe que tiene que subir la pelotita para que no le peguen, ¿no? No porque le guste subirse a la pelotita. So the same thing with the students, ¿ok? Ya no creo que el dicho me diga nada, voy a decir como me dice él. Ya no creo que me dé más tarea extra, entonces lo voy a hacer como dice él. ¿Ok? But they don't really understand. Es como cuando ustedes aprendieron el Padre Nuestro y todo eso, que lo pueden decir como 1000 veces. Sorry, yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but I have another question.
Sure.
When you,
Who's talking?
Me.
You, okay.
Me, Bianca.
Oh, Bianca,
Sorry.
okay.
Sorry for being dumb. I have a question, and when it says give at least 3 examples of how design translates into procedure, we are going to specify 3 elements of design, or is it going to be general?
Yeah, it can be more general. I will suggest that you guys use the unit, you know, as an example. Say, this is how they present the content. You open the unit, and the very first thing they present is the grammar. Okay, so that's the presentation stage for this particular textbook or whatever you're working with. Okay, the practice is, again, is guided, is controlled, just fill in the blanks. They already give you the verb and you change it. They already give you the vocabulary and you put it where it belongs. You know, you don't have to create anything. You just have to transform, change, conjugate. I don't know. Okay. And now the feedback, usually in the textbook, there is no feedback. The feedback comes from the teacher, okay? Sometimes the textbook gives you some advice on how to give feedback, you know, to praise or to punish or to guide, to lead students to reflect, I don't know, okay? But most of the time, it comes from you and your experience, okay? Entonces, si alguna vez les ha traicionado su consciente y su hermanito o alguien hizo algo malo y le soltaron una gasnatada, son conductistas, ¿ok? Porque pudieron haber tomado la decisión de decir, no, mira, déjame explicarte, déjame guiarte por ese camino, hermano, para que lo hagas bien. No, ya, así no se hace, hazlo bien, ¿ok? Entonces, su manera de dar feedback, pues siempre va a estar ahí. Porque en cuanto el alumno participe, nos vemos tentados a decir, ¿está bien o está mal? ¿O me equivoco? ¿Alguno de ustedes? Digo, si cuando le piden a alguno que lea, ya lo están corrigiendo. Es que se dice así, inmediatamente la corrección, ¿verdad? Porque no permiten errores, o sea, es algo que sin que ustedes saber, les inculcaron sus maestros o sus padres. ¿Ok? Es un reflejo de la mayoría de las personas. O sea, no aceptamos un error. ¿Por qué? Porque nosotros nos corrigieron. Entonces nosotros corregiremos a otros. No por ayudar, sino por saber que chido se siente. Hacer sentir mal a la otra persona. ¿Ok? Entonces, con entrenamiento, con conciencia, podemos ser mejores que eso. Ese es el punto. ¿Ok? Entonces, igual, el feedback, ¿cómo lo darían ustedes? ¿Qué harían? Una corrección inmediata en el momento, tomarías nota y corregirías más tarde. Le pedirías a los demás alumnos que corrijan, le pedirías al alumno que lo vuelva a decir hasta que le caiga el 20 al solo. Harías algún tipo de eco, ¿no? Ya, teacher,